If every single person in America put forward every dollar that we ever had, we have $25 trillion that we could shove toward the table. We cannot put enough money to even dent the debts that we have.
The whole system is a Ponzi scheme, and financial reconstructions have happened all the time and will continue to happen. And so if you're on the other side of that trade, you're going to benefit really well.
It's the people who are awake. And guess who the people are awake? The people listening to people like you.
I agree. I'm hard assets. I'm out of the Ponzi scheme. I don't save in dollars.
Government officials insist we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to the Money Block with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused program that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
And welcome, America. Welcome, world. You have tuned in at the right time, right place. This is America's Bitcoin-focused program, a place where you're going to learn about blockchain technology, cryptocurrency. We talk about philosophy, money, technology. It's all coming together. It's all changing our world. So you've tuned in at the right time, right place. And man, do we have a conversation for you today? I hope you have your thinking caps on. We're going to be talking about history of money, America's banking system, how it all relates, because you know what? History often rhymes. It doesn't necessarily repeat, but it rhymes. And if we don't learn about our history, we're doomed to repeat it. So today's guest is going to be perfect for that. But before I bring him on, I'm going to let you guys know that I want to give you a free gift. So you're going to see a QR code that's going to pop up right over here. Be sure to get out your phone, scan that. It's my way of saying thank you. It's my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. And these are ideas, tools, and principles that will help you navigate and become even more sovereign as we move into this digital age. I want to protect you and help you in those thoughts and processes. But more importantly, if you're watching online, because we are broadcasting coast to coast on BizTV, we're on TV, radio, online. But if you're specifically online, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, be a part of the conversation. We want to hear directly from you. And more importantly, again, I hope you studied history. I hope you know a little bit about the dollar. I hope you know a little bit about American banking. But if you don't, man, today is the treat. Today, I have a friend, somebody who is in my neck of the woods as well. His name is Dr. Scott Young. He's a business owner, an author, a podcaster, and he has a very similar love when it comes to history and money. So, Dr. Scott, it is so good to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me. To let the viewers know, give them about a minute or so background on yourself.
Well, I've been studying history for all my life, World War II history. And when you do World War II history, you got to study World War I. And, when I started to study business, I had to study, when I listened to accountants start to reason together, I didn't know anything about it. So I've been in my own business for 20 years and in, my field of audiology for 35 years. But, I had to really break my teeth on when I was probably 3 years into the field, I was 95% debt to income. Wow. I was so screwed, I didn't know what to do about it. And I had people that started to come along as I was turning over the business left and right. And in that same time frame, I had people who were understanding things and telling me what I needed to do. I was actually looking at blockchain in a way I hadn't even thought of. And this was back in 2010 and 11. So I was learning about international finance and so many different things. And I thought, what does this have to do with my business? And I was studying all kinds of different things that had no idea that would be relevant for today.
Wow. Well, you know what? You're a student of history, and it's probably helped you, like you said, in your business and in your pursuits. And so, guys, we've got to go to break, but we're going to be back. We're going to talk money. We're going to talk banking and history, how it all relates to blockchain technology, cryptocurrency. Stay put. This is the Money Block. We'll be right back after this break. what does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, America. This is round 2, segment 2 of the Money Block. I want to thank you for tuning in. We are syndicated coast to coast on BizTV. So whether you're on the radio, television, or online, this is the right place for you. And man, if you are interested in finance, Bitcoin, the history of money, man, we got a treat for you today. We're going to be talking about some things that are going to be relevant because, like I said in the first segment, if we don't understand where we came from, if we don't understand history, it often rhymes, and we don't want to be doomed to repeat some of the mistakes from the past. And man, money touches everything, and that's why this topic is important. But before we get this show on the road and continue our conversation with our guest today, I just want to let you know that I'm giving away a free copy, a digital copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. You can find it with that QR code right over there. Just get out your phone and scan it. It's my way of saying thank you for tuning in, and more importantly, like, comment, share, be a part of the conversation if you're watching online, because I think our guest today, Dr. Scott Young, he's got some fun facts that he's going to share with us. So love to hear your opinion and your thoughts on that. But Scott, let's go ahead and dive back into our conversation here, which is, I want to create a foundation for people, because a lot of times when people look at the dollar, they think about the banking system, they think about the founding of the United States, but they don't really know how all this comes together. I mean, we've got Article 1, Section 8, Article 1, Section 10. The founders were very clear that they wanted our money to be sound money, gold and silver, because they did experience hyperinflation with the Continental dollar. So what's your take on this? And did the founders do a good job, I guess?
Well, they did a wonderful job. I mean, it was never supposed to be based in central banking, and they actually firmed that up with the 14th Amendment. And I can show more about that here in just a minute. But the first article in the 8th and the 10th point stipulated it had to be based upon gold and silver. And when we moved away from that, and see, some people kind of say, well, then we shouldn't have a paper currency. Well, again, no one's going to walk around with bags of gold and walking into a different place. And so the only reason why we had things like a check or a paper currency is that you didn't want to walk in with gold, right? And you didn't want to be robbed in that way. So that's why we had a replacement. So there's a backing underneath it, right? So that's why we have what's called an asset-backed currency. And so in 1789,
used to, I guess, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so in 1789, the very first entity that was underneath the presidency is the Treasury. And so we had a separation of that circumstance with Alexander Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And Alexander Hamilton tried to push in a central banking. And that's when we have these separations and we start to see a pull back and forth over central banking. And no one really knows our own history, and they don't follow it very well with that.
Well, it's definitely not taught in schools, and if you look at the Constitution, it blatantly says that states are not allowed to emit bills of credit. And there was a great debate during the ratification of the Constitution when our country was being founded about whether the federal government was going to be able to emit bills of credit, and that power wasn't necessarily specifically given. But people will point to the creation of the Federal Reserve and be like, "Hey, that's how we got around it, because we still have the power to borrow." So we're borrowing from this cartel, this private central bank, to create these bills of credit, and which are in circulation. So when we look at this, is this really a workaround that should have been paid more closely attention to? Because Thomas Jefferson was a perfect example of a founding father who argued with Hamilton that this whole idea of a central bank was a horrible idea.
Well, and he 100% did, and there's a bunch of tension at the time frame. It's funny, by the way, because this conversation starts to riddle all the way through Howard Lutnick. Actually, there is probably a 10-second conversation that comes out with tariffs. And people are not even aware that Trump is talking about tariffs today that could go back to the founding fathers. And so when he's talking about tariffs, do you know that he says, and Howard Lutnick says, when they're talking in those round circles or those oval circles, he said that most of you guys don't realize we're talking from 1870 to 1913. And so he's talking about pre-Fed conversations. But yet, what that really is talking about is before the Fed comes into play. And in essence, he could be going back to the 1889 or 1789 conversation as well.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about this? When I think of the Federal Reserve, I think about the Constitution talking about gold and silver being, what we should be using as money. And even in the Constitution, how it says, debts need to be paid in gold and silver. And if a tax is levied against a citizen at the state level, well, technically, if that's a debt owed to the state, so that via the Constitution needs to be paid in gold and silver. And I always thought to myself, well, doesn't that make all state taxes unconstitutional then? I mean, if they're not being paid in gold and silver.
The problem we're struggling with on a lot of levels is that we have a push and pull between the states and the Fed. We have a push and pull between Congress and the Fed. We have the Fed versus what the SCOTUS is doing. And we have, for instance, just think about Minnesota, for instance, for example. We've heard about the massive amount of fraud. So we have Walz versus the state House and Senate. And then we have their instance of the SCOTUS courts. So when we had the initial setup, we have the House, the presidency, and you have the courts. And they were supposed to be this nice movement of all of them looking at each other. So for instance, House...
A tug of war of power?
Right, a war of power. So the House brings a bill. The Senate has to look at that bill and make sense of it, right? And then it is brought up to the presidency, and the presidency can either sign that bill or veto the bill. But then the House gets it back and has to pass it with a two-thirds vote. And then the House has to bring it up and get a 60%. And then it comes back up. But even if that all happens, SCOTUS has to say, you know what? It's not constitutional. And the problem that happens is that the Fed is an ignorance of all of that. And SCOTUS keeps ignoring that kind of thing. When it comes to money, one of the things that happens, it becomes a cartel inside of this thing. What's happened in all of this area, and I'm going to give you one example that's been happening. When there was a conversation of something called FinCEN, I want you guys all to look this up. What FinCEN created in, I believe it was in 2021, they created this thing that was from the courts from Biden's era. And what he wanted to do is from sex trafficking and from other human and drug trafficking. And he said, all you businesses had to register yourself through Treasury and FinCEN. And yet they actually deleted out any business that was over 4 million. They deleted out lawyers, bankers, congressmen, and everyone else but small businesses. And then late in 2024, I looked at it and said, wait, I shouldn't have to fill this out. This is wrong. The Texas SCOTUS courts and several other SCOTUS courts went back and forth, all the way up to the U.S. SCOTUS courts and I said, I'm not going to do this. And then Scott Bessent of Treasury said, we're not going to do this. Do you know that the other day, Bank of America tried to get me to sign this over and over again and tried to cancel my credit card? And I said, I'm not going to do an illegal order. And they backed off. You see, this is the same kind of thing that they're trying to push people on illegal type of orders.
So we got a lot to unpack when it comes to the constitutionality of what's going on, and it sounds like a lot has been bought and paid for by this cartel of central banks, which has undermined the power structure and the acknowledgement of what's going on in today's monetary system and policies, and even with the politicians. I want to go through this because we could touch on 1971, we could touch on the panics, which we'll do, but we got a lot to dive in. We probably won't cover it all this time, but we got to run to break. So when we come back, we're going to ask Dr. Scott Young his opinions on some of these items that I've mentioned here. But stay tuned. I got you on the edge of your seat because we got a lot to cover. But we'll be right back. This is the Money Block. We'll see you in a minute. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on BizTV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. And welcome back, America. Welcome back, world. This is segment 3, round 3 of the Money Block. Want to welcome you guys back. And if you were curious, yes, we are America's Bitcoin-focused syndicated show, which is TV, radio, online. And if you are watching online, well, be sure to give us a like, comment, share, be a part of the conversation. I think the historical facts that we're going to be talking about today may be intriguing. You may have some questions because I don't think we're going to be able to cover everything in this one episode because this is such a massive topic. But we could do a whole series on this because we've been covering the history of the dollar, the history of America's banking system. And out of my opinion, I have written a lot about this. In fact, as a free gift, I want you to download my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. Go ahead and scan that QR code that pops up right over there. I talk a whole lot about this, and it'll paint a clear picture if you're kind of buzzed and confused by the end of this because we cover so much. But on the line is Dr. Scott Young. He's a friend of mine. He's been in business. He's a podcaster, author, and is super curious and educated about this whole topic too. And like I mentioned, it's important that we understand our past so we can understand where we're going. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past, and so studying history is is a way to do it. And so, Dr. Scott Young, I want to continue the conversation here. We talked and touched a little bit about what the founding fathers' intentions were. Obviously, the founding of America at its time was this decentralized system of power, and there was big arguments about what is money, what can be used as money, are central banks good, are they bad, and we covered some of that. But the nature of government is to grow oftentimes. The nature of government is to often consolidate. And I would say that those facts are also true when it comes to financial issues and systems, because, it's money, right? We use it to trade economic value, our life force. But let's visit this, the history here. You have a presentation where you talk a lot about history before the creation of the Federal Reserve, America's central bank, which is technically not the first central bank of America. But in your presentation, it mentions the 1857 banking panic as a predictable crisis. Walk us through what happened during that panic, because I often think, these panics, these crises are often used to an advantage to consolidate more power. Was this situation used to centralize more power in banks? Because I'm a big fan of decentralization. I would like to see more money, more power decentralized, but these financial panics often get used for such consolidations.
You're dead on. I mean, one of the things I was asking the Lord, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, is like, what am I missing? Like, I've been spending a lot of time on the Fed, and God goes, I want you to go back in time and go pre-Fed and pre-Civil War. I'm like, what? And I'm like, what? Why would I do that? And so I started to look at pre-Fed banking, but even going to the Civil War. And I'd studied the Civil War, I'd studied the Revolutionary War, but I wanted to look at the banking at the Civil War and a little bit around the Civil War. One of the things I found is that there were 1,500 banks that were very decentralized. But what they did in the South, for instance, is that they were based upon slave trading. And so they were, their assets were based upon slaves, which is a little bit of a difficult thing, which was abhorrent to the North. And so they were, which was difficult. So you're talking about your currency as based upon that. And so that what the North did is actually infused $400 million into around 1863 and 1864, which won them the Civil War. And what they did is they knocked it down to 700 banks, and which actually just wiped out the South. And actually led to some of the brutal things like the burning of Atlanta. So we see a lot of that kind of thing. And they actually just closed up banks. Now, this actually happens many different times in many different ways that you see. So when we come to the end of the Civil War, we see this very strange situation. I mean, Lincoln's already won in 1865, right? And so the end of the Civil War happens. Lincoln's won. The greenback dollar was not what the central bankers wanted. They did not want the greenback dollar happening, because that meant the government was actually making a dollar that was based upon a currency that they could control, the government could control.
Which I could see that. The banks would not be for that because they want the government borrowing from the banks, right? But even the greenback, though, was a fiat currency, unconstitutional in the sense that it wasn't backed by gold and silver.
Yes, yeah. But at least it was some controlling kind of thing, right? And so then we have this strange killing of Lincoln. And the way that Lincoln was killed, when you go back and look at it, it doesn't make any sense. Why is Lincoln killed, months and months after the election? And why is he killed, and all the little nuances of why he's killed, and how some of the conspirators are killed. So that gets you kind of funky in this.
Which wasn't right? JFK killed shortly after talking about issuing silver dollars from the Treasury?
He's killed after, after the, he puts in Executive Order 11110, which is the executive order that puts in the silver dollar.
From the Treasury.
And from Treasury.
Yeah.
So it's also that same kind of thing, that same kind of mentality that happens. He also says he wants to break the CIA up into 1,000 pieces. So it's a direct push on the powers that be.
Yeah,
right?
let's be honest here. The reason why governments don't like sound money like gold and silver is because it's a handcuffed on their spending. If you can just borrow money from nilly-willy out of thin air, you could pay and buy for all sorts of things you don't really need.
Right. But then here's what most people have never read. They have to go backward. And I challenge every single reader that's watching the show today is to go read the 14th Amendment. And you need to slow down as you read the 14th Amendment. It's written in 1868. And I want you to just look at the 14th Amendment under the 4th section. So it says this: the validity of public debt of the United States authorized by law, including the debts incurred by payments of pensions and bounties. Now, bounties is a little funny word because that means, what they would do. For services in suppressing insurrection and rebellion shall not be questioned. That means the work that the government would do. But neither the United States or any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection and rebellion against the United States, or claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave. But all such debts, obligation, and claims shall be held illegal or void. Here's what that now I know those are words that we don't actually use because it's just a way that we don't write. Here's what it's basically saying.
We got to cover it. When we come back, I want you to unpack that 14th Amendment, your perspective. When we come back, we'll get more from Scott. You guys stay tuned. This is the Money Block. We'll be right back after this break. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on BizTV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is segment 4, round 4 of the Money Block, and you have tuned in at the right time, right place. We are syndicated on BizTV, coast to coast, and we are online, radio, television. We're all over the place, so if you're watching online, well, be sure to be a part of this conversation. Like and subscribe, comment. We want to hear from you and what you think about the topic of today. And man, this topic today we've been covering with a friend of mine, Dr. Scott Young. He's a student of history, monetary policy, stuff that I love talking about and writing about. And we're kind of we're unpacking a little bit of the history of the dollar, America's banking system, and reason being is we need to understand where we've come from in order to better prepare for the future, so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. It's just a wise thing to do. We got to build some context, and that's what we're doing on today's show. And I just want to let you know, if you want to go deeper into this, you can most certainly download my book, a digital copy, for free. It's my way of saying thank you for tuning in. You're going to see a QR code that pops up right over there. Download the book because I do talk about this monetary history in more detail. But online, like I said, is Dr. Scott Young. And, Scott, let's pick up the conversation here. We were talking about these financial panics that often happened in the banking system throughout America's history. And we probably don't have enough time to cover them all, but every time a crisis, a war, a panic happened, it seems like power was consolidated, banks were consolidated, money was changed, defaults happened, bailouts happened. I mean, 1907 is a perfect example. It was, you had JP Morgan coming in to the rescue in 1907 to rescue the system. But let's just talk about this. I mean, when you look at all of these points in history, and this is well before the creation of the Federal Reserve, because I mean, the Federal Reserve was actually ushered in to, quote unquote, try to stop some of these boom and bust panics. But as you know, 16 years later, we had the Great Depression after the creation of the Federal Reserve. Do you have anything to say on any of this?
Well, I mean, when you look back forward, I mean, when you look back from 1907, do you know that there were dozens and dozens and dozens of bank runs? And you go, well, the historians don't even look at why the bank runs were happening. It's like, who started it? The chicken and the egg. The answer is the bankers created the bank runs. And then what they did is they moved the money out of the country and made the people panic, and then brought the money back into the bank, so that it was that, and not in that bank, they closed that bank. That's what their whole goal was. When you go back and look at it, and we can do that because we have the benefit of looking backward 100 years. Mm-hmm. And so the reality is, and by the way, we're seeing that right now. We have the benefit of seeing 2008. What was the number one thing that was the problem with the mortgage industry in 2008? It's the ARMs, the adjustable rate mortgages, where they were giving people these ugly mortgages that would have just interest rates. So you had a 3-year ARM and you just had an interest rate. And then after that time frame, boom, you would have this massive rate change. Guess what they started doing in 2020? Adjustable rate mortgages. We thought those were illegal. They couldn't do that. Guess what's happening to people in 2023 to 2025? Adjustable rate mortgages. And so we're seeing that the panics that are happening today and the banking crisis, do you know that the banking crisis is probably 30 times higher than 2008 than it is today? I mean, it's so crazy and worse than it is. Why? Now it's so unbelievable and unsolvable, it can't be solved. You cannot fix the crisis.
Right.
And people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's why, even though we're unpacking and touching on a lot of things here, it's just going to pique people's curiosities to go deeper into why our system works the way that it does. I mean, what, in your opinion, and I don't mean to get super conspiratorial here, but human nature, oftentimes when you have a already consolidated amount of power, you often want more. And so there's a motive to want to consolidate more and to create more power and to do things in your own benefit. Was this like a master plan? Like we want a central bank, we want to create it in secrecy on Jekyll Island in 1910, and then usher this bill in, and around Christmas time in 1913, create the IRS, all this stuff? Or was this just like, okay, pieces just fell into place, and this is how it happened because people were incentivized to do it? There's a lot of different ways.
They were creating it, because Senator Aldrich in 1910 tried to create the central banking. And he was roundly kicked out of the Senate, almost pushed out of the Senate for trying to create it. And once he was pushed out of the Senate, they said, now let's just go to Jekyll Island in South Carolina. They walked in and they were not even allowed.
It was a duck hunt, right?
Yeah, to duck hunt, but they were not even allowed to use their last names.
Yeah.
They were using their first names back and forth. And so that when they sat down and talked about it, and they had to pontificate back and forth, and they created something called the Federal Reserve. And when they did it, when they did it in December 23rd, 1913, almost all of Senate and the House was gone. And so when they signed it into law, almost no one ever voted on it. So you always have to be really concerned when Congress and Senate pushes bills through in Christmas time.
Yeah.
Okay? Because no one's there. And so you have to wonder what's going on in that time frame.
Well,
okay? And that's always that was what they tried to push forward. And it was, and by the way, President Wilson, if you go back in time and when they asked him, he said it was the worst thing that he ever put forward.
Yeah, because his idea was, I want to create a government-controlled central bank. He kind of campaigned on that, but what we got was not a government-controlled central bank, but it's a cartel of central banks with shareholders that get paid 6% annually on this money creation, which the government is actually borrowing from. So it's not what he wanted. I mean, obviously, he probably figured out, oh man, this was a big mistake. I screwed up my country now. But
he was controlled from the beginning as well. That was that. But see, this was a long-term plan. They were playing the long game. Okay, I mean, they were walking into this and had the plan. It was from the 1868 14th Amendment. That was the whole point. They played it from the 1868. They played it from 1871 when they created the corporation, and they had to play it out through the bank runs all the way to 1913. So they had to create the plan and they had to work it. Okay, and so when we go back over to the 14th Amendment in the fourth section, what the 14th Amendment actually says, and to answer your basic question here is this: the validity of the public debt basically stipulates what a central banking is. This is the problem with the central banking and the Fed, because the Fed is a central banker. Okay, it interacts inside of all the countries, right? It works with the Central Bank of Iraq and all the UK banks and all the other things. What the 14th Amendment says is because you work with all the other banks, it means that those banks and those debts that you have, by the way, the $38 trillion that we have of debt, and by the way, who took out that credit? The answer is, I never took out that credit. I never benefited from that credit. I never took out that credit. That debt, those claims, shall be held illegal and void. And by the way, do you know what Trump has actually said different times? He said it different ways. He goes, we'll just write a check from Bitcoin, or we'll just have it written off. Every time he says that, he's not trying to say he's going to write a Bitcoin check. He's basically telling you, we're not even going to pay for it.
There's always been an ongoing battle, whether it was Hamilton or if you look at President Jackson, to kill the central banks, the idea of a central bank. It just seems like this has been an ongoing theme in America's history and financial system, which, would you concur with that?
Right. I mean, he would, but here's the point. I want you to think about this. These debts, do you know that in America today, we have $138 trillion of debt? If every single person in America put forward every dollar of debt, or every dollar that we ever had, we have $25 trillion that we could shove toward the table to pay off debt. That's not enough to even pay. I mean, we cannot put enough money to even dent the debts that we have. Well, these are unpayable debts. And that's why I'm trying to tell you, the debts that we have are unpayable.
Well, the whole system is a Ponzi scheme. And if you want to learn more about that, download my book, Foundations for Liberty. We're going to cover more about it because the dollar is, in its current form, the greatest Ponzi scheme ever. All right, guys, we'll be right back after this break. We'll be more with Scott, Dr. Scott Young. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on BizTV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is segment 5, round 5 of the Money Block, syndicated coast to coast on BizTV. I want to welcome all of you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts. This is the place where we often talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but today's a little different. We're giving some context to historical aspects of the dollar, our banking system, what we need to know, and some of it is unfortunate, some of it's scary, some of it's maybe sounds conspiratorial, but you have to go down this road to understand where we've come from, to understand where we might be going. And that's what I like to do. I like to have these kind of conversations. Today, we've been talking to my friend, Dr. Scott Young, about some of these, this past history that is applicable to understanding the potential future. But, you know, I just want to let you guys know that if you want to go deeper, dive deeper into this, you can download a free copy of my digital version of my book, Foundations for Liberty. You can scan that QR code right over there. Be sure, if you're watching online, like, subscribe, comment, share, be a part of this conversation. We want to hear what you think about some of these historical facts. But Dr. Scott Young, let's continue our conversation here. I don't want to necessarily be all doom and gloom, because some of these things are scary, and some of it, is unfortunate that we have to talk about some of these facts about our monetary system, because, at the end of the day, if our money is compromised, it is a representation of our life force, our time, labor, energy, and freedom. And if that is compromised in itself, the very tool that we use, then technically we are slaves to some extent, and our freedoms are compromised. But let's talk about solutions. If we were to go back to constitutional money, or even have the complete separation of state and money, utilizing decentralized peer-to-peer systems like Bitcoin, there's a ton of different ways that this could happen and unfold. And I don't really care which one unfolds, so long as we have the option and the privilege to choose what kind of money we want to use. But for those who are listening, this is not necessarily financial advice, because we can't give quote unquote financial advice, but I guess let me rephrase the question. What are you doing to prepare for any type of new crisis, reset, revaluation, whatever you want to classify it as? How are you preparing?
Well, a couple of things I would say. First off, if President Trump was sitting there upset and worried about a bankruptcy of America, he'd be showing it, wouldn't he? The other people, the opposite, the Great Reset people, their decision, their desire was CBDCs, the central bank digital currency. What they wanted is to switch us into that. President Trump, when he came up with the big, beautiful bill, was to kill off CBDCs. See, so if you're worried about CBDCs, which would be a type of digital thing that would have no value, he killed it at the same time frame. Okay, and here's the fun thing: stable coins were actually introduced at the same exact time frame. Okay, so what he did is he created an asset-backed situation because we had to have that kind of thing. So there are all kinds of cool things that were built into the systems. And at that same time frame, there has been a boost of a couple things. Number one, I have been saying since 2020, get into gold and silver. And so we're seeing people, and I'm seeing people buying into Bitcoin and cryptos just dramatically. So we're seeing a boost. I got fired from a financial planner because I said Japan and the US cannot be in this negative debt to income ratio. And when I got kicked out, I moved all of my assets out of the market, and they laughed at me. Do you know that my stuff was, I remember it was like 1,600 in gold, and I don't remember the silver part because I had it in silver too. And it was 1,600. Do you know now it's 4,300? I mean, I haven't even added to my 401k, and it's that. Guys, gold, big deal, right? You can, do you know that people in 1986 were intimating if you took away this, if you took away the Fed from this thing, gold would go at least to 5,000. Do you know some people are intimating that it could hit, if Treasury would set it, it would go to 27K. It's time to buy into that. And the other thing I believe that we're going to see is a bankruptcy of the Fed, and we just shove it down their throat. But I always say this: faith is the substance of things hoped for and the promise of things unseen. I don't operate in fear. I don't worry about things that I can't control. I just let it flow away. I operate in faith. I'm calm. I sit in just a peace, just like a quarterback in a pocket, right? If you operate and you have happy feet, it doesn't help anymore when those 300-pound guys are rushing at you. You got to be calm.
Right. Yeah. And the bottom line is the math does not add up when it comes to our current system, and opportunity is always available when crisis is present. And if you look at history, financial resets, financial defaults, financial reconstructions have happened all the time and will continue to happen. And so if you're on the other side of that trade, if you're on the other side of that position, you're going to benefit really well from that. And so take this as an opportunity.
It's the people who are awake, though.
Yeah.
But it's the people who are awake. And guess who the people are awake? The people listening to people like you.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And so when it comes to it, my strategy, my personal strategy, I'm hard assets. I'm out of the Ponzi scheme. I don't save in dollars. I was having a meeting with a banker talking about Bitcoin and crypto and how they could implement it into their systems. And guess what? They were like, so what do you save in? And I was like, well, I don't save in dollars. And they were like, you don't save in dollars? And I was like, why would I? I was like, it's my purchasing power is eroded away, and I can't, there's no way. So at the end of the day, just be ready. Changes are coming, and buy hard assets, gold, silver, Bitcoin, real estate. Be out of the Ponzi scheme. That's, again, not personal financial advice. That's just what I'm doing. That's what Scott's doing. And hopefully we'll be beneficiaries of that trade. So, Scott, we've got a couple seconds. Website, real quick.
drscottyoung.com. That's where you can find me, and you can find the correct social media places, drscottyoung.com. Awesome.
And assuming you're on social media as well?
Yep, and those are the best places to find me, and then you can kind of lock into the right places in there.
Awesome. Well, Scott, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming today, talking about money history, banking history, all relevant to prepare for the future. All right, guys, we will see you guys same time, same place. This is the Money Block. Adios.
The opinions and suggestions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. This program is a product of Moore Media, LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Moore Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Moore Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.